In this video, I'm going to talk about the Neptune-Pluto-Uranus constellation that's coming up and that is extremely rare, that hasn't happened for over 200 years now, and that is going to have a massive impact on the world and that will quite literally change everything. All right, folks, so in the midst of all of the crazy stuff that's happening with wars brewing and with all the certainties breaking down economically and scientifically and everything really around us seeming to break and to fall and crumble, it's possible to, it's easy to oversee and to overlook this really, really big and in many ways very hopeful constellation that is coming up and that we're actually going into, pretty much now. And that is very, very rare too. And I'm talking about the Uranus-Pluto-Neptune constellation. It's a talent triangle, so a harmonic relationship between the three, which hasn't happened for a long, long, long time. The last time is over 200 years ago, and then before that again, over 200 years ago, that we had a harmonic constellation between these three planets. Now, what does it mean that this is coming up? So when you're looking here at the chart, and maybe it helps a little bit to visualize this, you see this, what I'm talking about, that we have, it's basically now already an aspect. I have here a chart of the planets, just showing the outer planets. I'm not showing the inner planets at all here, for this moment right now. This is 2024 August. And you see that we have, the beginning of a constellation between these three planets, Pluto, see here, and Uranus, okay, and Neptune, right? Neptune down here, right? So I didn't make it so nice, but you can make it out. You can see what I mean, right? So this constellation is what I'm talking about, this triangle. It's that blue triangle here, right? That you can see, the blue talent triangle as it's called. So in order to understand what this is about, and again, this is super rare, right? This hasn't happened for over 200 years. 250 years ago, we had the last time of a similar constellation of these three planets, right? So what does it mean? First of all, we have to understand the planets themselves in those places, what they mean, right? And then we can put together this confluence, right? The harmonious confluence of the three. So on the one hand, we've got Pluto here in the first degree of Aquarius, right? So it's just Pluto after a very long time in Capricorn, where it was about transforming the power structures of the world. Also, Pluto brings darkness into things, but also transformation. A lot of current astrologers talk about Pluto as if it was something positive. It's not positive. It's darkness. It's like it's confrontation with darkness, which, yes, as a side product, you have to transform, and that's a good thing, right? Once you see the darkness, either you give in, you become part of the darkness, right? Or you stand up, you say, no, I'm with the light, and I'm going to fight for the light, and you change something, right? But it's going to be painful. That change is going to be very painful, right? So Pluto going through Capricorn is basically being, for us a long time of seeing this process in action with regards to the powers that be. Capricorn stands for, in mundane, it stands for the power structures of the world, the governments, basically. So over the last 10, 20 years, we've seen the evil that governments can do. We've seen the power that governments wield. We've lost, a lot of the illusions about governments, but also we've seen now towards the end of this whole process, we're seeing a resurgence or a standing up of people against what is now very clearly seen as these abusive power structures in governments, right? And now Pluto is going into Aquarius, and Aquarius is about ideas and is about technologies and is about humanitarian ideals, the ideals that govern society, the big ideas, innovation and justice and just the big ideas, that not the big ideas on the TEDx stage, but the big ideas on the humanity stage, the stage that, where ideas are downloaded from universal consciousness, from the archetypal realm, and then they enter into the domain of human affairs. That's Aquarius. And Pluto enters there. So when Pluto enters there, it means that we're going to have now, starting a long phase in which this darkness and the power struggles are going to be around ideas and around technology, right? Around ideas and around technology. We're going to have fights and battles around ideas and around technology for the next many, many years, right? With Pluto being Aquarius. You can already see the start of that with people now fighting around platforms, which ideas are allowed. Is it allowed? X says it's free, you can speak here. Others say you shouldn't be free, we should shut down the ideas, right? And others say again, we need to shut down the platforms from different countries, Chinese platforms, TikTok, and so on, right? All of this is Pluto and Aquarius, right? And this is where Pluto and Aquarius is the battle around ideas and technologies, right? And this is where one of these. The second one is Neptune here. Neptune in the last degree of Pisces, right? So Neptune in Pisces is the last degree. Neptune is basically entering soon. Next year is going to soon enter into the first degree of Aries, right? So this is a transition. Neptune was here for a long time, and we had the dissolution of borders, and we had kind of, a very dreamy time as well around people not being clear around, what to believe in and what to really, what ideals to hold, right? All of this, there was a very ephemeral and ethereal quality to the beliefs that were held and to the visions that people had, throughout this whole time with Neptune being in Pisces. But now Neptune, together with actually, Saturn is going to come there too, and they're going to both go in the first degree of Aries. And we're going to have battles and fights. Aries is fighting around religion. Religion is Neptune, right? We're going to have battles for religion, battles around religious ideals, right? So this is going to be Neptune. There's more to it too, but this is just what we need to take away right now. Neptune in the first degree of Aries, right? And then we're going to have, and still in Neptune, it's still in Pisces, but I already said what it's going to be in Aries, right? And then we have here Uranus still in Taurus, where it's about the revolution of the financial structures, the revolution of the values, the revolution of Bitcoin and crypto and all of that, but also the revolution of what we think is valuable, right? And how we deal with nature. And then that's going to go into Uranus. It's going to go into Gemini, right? Uranus is going to go into Gemini, right? And when it goes into Gemini, first degree of Gemini, we're going to see a revolution of communication channels and communication means and communication networks, right? So a lot of communication, a lot of tech, right? And a lot of religious ideas. As all of these are going to be constellated, right? And these three aspects, these three elements, I told you right now where they are right now with their kind of the signs where they're in right now, but I also told you the signs that they're going to go to in the coming years. Right? In the coming years when this constellation perfects. Why? Because that's when it's going to go perfect, right? It's going to get more and more close and more, harmonious. So we're going to have this here. You see, this is going to be perfect here, right? It's perfect here in 26. See, this is the perfect triangle. This is called, by the way, this blue triangle is called a talent triangle. So we call this is a constellation where we have a easy and harmonious exchange and a kind of magical realization of the elements that are in there. So what I said before about the battle of ideas and technology, right? Pluto here, and the innovations that are going to happen in the communication sphere, in the communication sphere, right? Which is here, Uranus and Gemini. And then the new religious ideas, right? Aries, Neptune is also the founding of new religious ideas. There will be new religions. There will be new religious movements. There will be new salvation movements, in the coming years. There will be founders of, great founders will emerge that will create these salvation movements, that religious movements or political movements that people believe in, right? And follow. And that's going to be as well with Neptune and Aries. And these three aspects, right? And there's going to be battle around those religious ideas, which is also Aries, Neptune, right? And these three elements, they're going to very harmoniously flow together, which means that, right, when you put this together, it means that there's going to be these new religious ideals and these new ideologies, right? These new could be political ideologies or could be religious ideologies, right? And they will basically have a very powerful effect on, they will draw on very powerful ideas that are directly coming from the archetypal realm, right? And they will have this super revolutionary impact on the communication channels, on the social, there will be new social media networks. With Uranus going into Gemini, we're going to see lots of completely new communication networks, completely new social networks that we can't even imagine right now. Social media networks that will be all in augmented reality, that will be all in virtual reality, that will be all with, haptic and senses that we can't even imagine, telepathic ones that are directly people are going to be able to directly send thoughts, right? All of this stuff, which currently, things that currently sound crazy and next level with regards to communications and communication networks are going to happen with Uranus coming into Gemini, right? And these three forces, they're going to lead to a massive change in collective consciousness. Now, what this collective consciousness change is, I can only tell you by going back in history, right? As I said before, it has been hundreds of years that this constellation has not been there, right? And I'm going to tell you a little bit. I'm going to give you an overview, right? I'm not going to do a big history lesson, I'm not going to, try and write the whole book here in one video. That's not the purpose of this, but I do want to give you an idea of what's waiting. I looked at all the cycles. I analyzed the cycles over hundreds and hundreds of years, and I look at cycles, recurrences and statistical relevance. And I'm working on several things there. Actually, some very interesting AI. With AI, you can do a lot on this. And, with data science, with AI, it's not just the manual that I'm doing here right now. Obviously, the manual is always the right, the good starting point, right? It's a perfect starting point for you to be able to see, to get a feel for what these cycles are doing. But in essence, these cycles are the rhythm of history, a rhythm of history. We have a rhythm of the economy and the rhythm of history, right? And they're written in these cycles. All right, here we are. So here we had a square, a T-square. What is it? This is in the 16th century. I went 2 times back, right? This is in the 16th century, mid-16th century. We had a square of these three forces, of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They were in a T-square. You see this triangle here? This is not a harmonious triangle. This is a very harsh triangle, okay? There was a harsh triangle here in the 16th century, okay? So what happened then in the 16th century? Towards mid to late 16th century, they were constellated, right? Like this, and in a harsh way. What happened then is that you had a big paradigm change in that time, right? And this paradigm change was about the Copernican worldview. So Copernicus came up and changed the worldview from the heliocentric to the geocentric model. And more importantly, not just that, it was the other way around, obviously, from the geocentric to the heliocentric model. And it was not just that we changed our position relatively to the sun, right, in the cosmos, or, the centrality. So it's not really just about our centrality being knocked off and instead sun being the center when we move from the geocentric to the heliocentric model, but rather what Copernicus did in the Copernican revolution is that it allowed a new image of the world, a new paradigm, a new worldview, in which the human's role was to investigate and to do empirical investigation, right? And find out about things. And the human was not anymore at the center of everything with, just God telling you how everything is and that's it. But rather, we were just a small part of the universe and we had to find out ourselves through investigating, right? And this is when modern science was born, right? So the paradigm shift that allowed modern science to emerge was the Copernican revolution, which coincided with that constellation that I just showed you. Now, the next big change was in the 18th century, right? Again, 200 and something years later. So we're going ahead some 200 years, and some 200 years later, we get this very beautiful triangle, grand trine. You see this? We got a grand trine here. Here's a grand trine between the three of them. Between Pluto and Uranus and Neptune. You see this? Okay? So this grand trine, it's in the late 18th century. It was there for a few years. And what does this correspond with? It corresponds with another big paradigm change, another shift of paradigms, right? So in this time, we basically, humanity, or the forefront of humanity, shifted into a new worldview, the foundations of which were laid by people like Adam Smith and Immanuel Kant and the French Revolution, the leaders of the French Revolution as well, people like Diderot, who were working on the encyclopedia at that point, which was this attempt to rationalize all of knowledge. And Adam Smith, was the first to think rationally about the economy. And, many others around that time who really laid the foundation for the type of rationalism, the rationalist worldview, the rationalist Western, really, worldview, which emerged around that time, around the mid to late 18th century, which became dominant and which to this day, in some ways, has, become the dominant worldview everywhere, right? Even though there's, other civilizations and they're now rising up and they're seeing things differently. But nonetheless, in many ways, that rationalist worldview, which emerged in the West in the 18th century, has over the last couple of hundred years been the main paradigm in many ways, right? At least like the forefront of social and scientific activity. Of course, there has been a lot of resistance against it as well from traditionalists, right? From people who believe that religion, cannot be rationalized, shouldn't be rationalized. For people who know that there is something beyond the rational as well. There's not just the rational, there is the supra-rational. There's the unconscious, the pre-rational. There's different layers and levels. Mystics always knew this, right? The mystics always knew this. And so there has been resistance from a lot of these sides. But nonetheless, the paradigm shift happened in this time. And this new paradigm became the dominant paradigm. And this is what I wanted to show, what I wanted to prove, that when we have these constellations, when we have this harmonious constellation of Neptune and Pluto and Uranus, right? Every time we have those, basically what happens is that we get a paradigm shift. Not exactly at that time, right? So in my historical investigations, I found this not exactly at that time, but these constellations, they basically lead to a phase transition in the entire global consciousness, right? The frequency changes, right, collectively, and suddenly ideas that were previously crazy or heretic or outsider or whatever, they become possible to be the mainstream, to the new mainstream, the new paradigm, right? And the new paradigm very quickly comes after that. So when we saw the first one that I showed you in the 16th century, shortly after that constellation, not during that constellation, the constellation that I showed you in the 16th century with Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, that was only, Copernicus and Giordano Bruno was going around talking about this and stuff, but that was not yet a mainstream, right? Shortly after that, you have all these people. You have Descartes and, Isaac Newton and Galileo Galilei, and so on. And all those people are coming and saying, okay, this is the new science, right? This is the new science, establishing the new paradigm. Similar to the constellation that was in the 18th century, right? In the 18th century, we had the constellation of Uranus, Neptune, Pluto that I showed you. And the phase transition happens. There's some pioneers who are picking it up early, right? And shortly after, you have all of these people coming and rationalizing everything, the economy, the philosophy, and everything, the industry, and then industrialization and stuff, right? So what I want to tell you with this is that we are now going into a similar phase like that. We are now, really, right now, we're going into a historical paradigm shift phase. Right? Historical importance. So what I'm telling you is that right now we are at a phase when this constellation is starting to get very active, this historic constellation, right? Which always corresponds with these big paradigm shifts, the big paradigm shifts on a global level in what people believe in what is collective consciousness, understands, what it's able to understand, what it's able to really make sense of. And this is going on right now. You see this here? So we have the constellation is coming in 2025. It's perfect in 25. And then it stays there, right, until 27. After 27, it starts to go out of aspect, right? But here in 27, it's still perfectly in aspect, right? So from starting now, we get the first glimpses. Then 25, it comes into aspect. 26, 27, it's in aspect. After 27, it leaves, right? It's out. So it's these couple of years, right? So these couple of years, and this is at the same time as we have all the crazy stuff going on, right? All the dangerous constellation that I talk of in the other videos, the World War stuff and so on. In this very dangerous time that we're in, at the same time, we're having a epochal, an era making, right? A very, very historically important paradigm shift that's happening right now that we're in the midst of. And this paradigm shift, what is it going to be about? What is it going to be about? I can say from where I'm seeing it, how I'm seeing it, develop and move. It's going to be around the broadening of our understanding from the rational mindset to a much more holistic mindset. After we come out of this paradigm shift, after the new, founders of the new sciences and the new perspectives emerge and really do their thing, we're going to see the world very, very differently. People will understand astrology, will understand that astrology is an integral part of reality. People will understand mysticism. It won't be any more woo-woo crazy stuff. It will be the center of society. Everybody will understand it. Everybody will study it. People will study it in schools, right? Kids will study it in schools, right? So the spiritual will become part of the rational again. It won't be staying outside somewhere on the margins, right? And what else? Well, I've said that before. How we see reality, how we play with how we imagine reality, the world, how we create the world is impacted by this constellation, which is why virtual and augmented reality are going to play a very big role, right? How we see the universe, how we can create universe, how we interact with it. Technologies in general are going to play a very, very big role. But that's a topic for other videos, for future videos to discuss. There's so much more as well. The reality of psychic energies, the reality of disclosure with regards to closer encounters, where there is a lot happening, where there's a lot of things being revealed right now, which previously were deemed absolutely insane and, out of the possible, out of the range of the possible. All of that is changing as well. But those are topics for future discussion. All I wanted to do on this video is to show you the importance of this historical phase that we're going through with regards to the cycles and how rare they are really. So make sure that you stay on this channel. If you haven't done so yet, subscribe to this channel right now. Make sure that you get the future insights and investigations that we do here. Also like this video. Let's push it out there and tell me in the comments what you think the biggest changes in the coming paradigm shift will be. What will be the novelties? How will we see the world differently in the coming years? We all know it's a revolutionary time, but how we're going to see the world differently, I want to hear what you think about it. Let me know in the comments. Let's have that conversation as well. And until the next time, be well and be blessed.